is Brandon White, and the committee assistant is Logan Schaff. Logan, would you mind calling the roll, please?
Senator Berg.
Present.
Senator Neal. Senator Westerfield. Here. Representative Brown. Representative Heverin. Here. Representative Kulkarni. Kimberly Baird. Here. Divine Karama. James Coleman. Jameer Davis. Lyndon Pryor. Co-Chair Mays Bledsoe. Here. Co-Chair Timoney.
Here. And we do have a quorum present. But before we start with our business, do any members have any comments or statements they'd like to make before we begin, or recognitions? All right. I'd just like to remind everyone the purpose of the commission shall be to conduct studies and research on issues where disparities may exist across the sectors of educational equity, child welfare, health, economic opportunity, juvenile justice, criminal justice, and any other sectors that are deemed relevant in an effort to identify areas of improvement in providing services and opportunities for minority communities. Before we'll move on to the next, we do need to approve our minutes because we do have a quorum.
Move approval.
We have a motion. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes approved. All right. We'll move right into our agenda. And the first item on our agenda is searching for Kentucky's Juneteenth. So if we can have our speaker come forward. Dr. Patrick Lewis, Director of Collections and Research, the Filson Historical Society. Sir, if you could make sure that your green light is on your microphone, and I'll let you go ahead and introduce yourself and start your presentation.
Sure. I'm Patrick Lewis. I'm Director of Collections and Research at the Filson Historical Society. Thank you all for the opportunity to come present here. Thanks to Senator Mays Bledsoe for seeing an earlier version of this presentation and arranging this invitation. I wanted to start before we talk about Juneteenth and the end of the Civil War and slavery in Kentucky with a document that represents the way that most Kentuckians found freedom, and that was, of course, a very small number from enslavement in the antebellum era. This is a manumission document that was recently donated to the Filson by the family of Sarah Dixon, she and her husband Clark Coleman, who had also been emancipated from Lexington a few years before, married after her freedom and moved across the river to southern Ohio. On the precipice of the Civil War in the 1850s, slavery was in no way dying in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. In fact, boons such as the new Fugitive Slave Law and the Compromise of 1850 had meant that the sale of human beings here, as in Cheapside, was only increasing. As of 2021, of course, we have a federal holiday, Juneteenth, that commemorates emancipation and the end of the Civil War, commemorating an incident in Texas when General Gordon Granger here, who coincidentally is buried in Lexington Cemetery, read an order to a crowd of refugees in Galveston, announcing their freedom. Of course, by virtue of the Emancipation Proclamation, those people had been freed since January 1st, 1863, and so this is a powerful reminder for us as Americans today that laws are not enforceable on their own, that rights have to be claimed and asserted still today. So, when is Kentucky's Juneteenth? This is a local story in Texas, but we have our own. There are a couple of candidates. The most obvious one is August 8th, celebrated in Western Kentucky, primarily in Paducah. There are a few different theories about how this commemoration came to be. It could be tying in with celebrations of sort of hemispheric emancipation originating out of Haiti. It could be tied to some commemorations locally in Tennessee. August 8th, 1865 is a really dangerous time for any sort of large-scale black celebration of freedom, and would have been surrounding a state election that had been quite tense with lots of military supervision to prevent hostility at the polls. It is unlikely that large numbers of African American people gathered in Paducah on August 8th, 1865, though they started to do so later. We need to look earlier than August 8th. So I'm going to propose a few dates. February 29th, 1864 was the date when African American enlistment in the United States Army was approved in Kentucky. This follows almost a year after black men from other states could enlist in the United States Army. State political leaders wanted to resist black enlistment as long as possible. Now, the unfortunate part about this date is that brought freedom to the soldier himself, but it didn't do anything for his family. That didn't come until March 3rd, 1865. I'm going to read an affidavit from a woman named Clarissa Burdett, which was given before a notary at Camp Nelson on March 27th, 1865. She says, "I am a married woman and have 4 children. My husband, Elijah Burdett, is a soldier in the 12th U.S. Colored Heavy Artillery. I and my children belonged to Smith Alford, Garrett County, Kentucky. When my husband enlisted, my master beat me over the head with an axe handle, saying as he did so that he beat me for letting Eli Burdett go off. On Wednesday last, March 22nd, he tied my hands, threw the rope over a joist, stripped me entirely naked, and gave me about 300 lashes." She goes on in some detail for a little while, eventually abandoning her children to find safety for herself at Camp Nelson. These are the dangers that the families of black soldiers experienced throughout the war, though officially they were granted their freedom by the state in March of 1865. And this is the situation that the state encounters when John Palmer takes over as the military commander of Kentucky in early 1865. He was born in Scott County, grew up in Christian County until 1831 when he moved to Illinois. He evolved from being an anti-slavery Democrat to becoming a Republican elector for Abraham Lincoln in 1860, became a soldier commanding the 14th Illinois Infantry. He was tasked in Kentucky with defeating guerrillas, reincorporating Confederates into the body politic, and managing emancipation. Palmer gives a very important order on May 11th, 1865. This is another one of those dates that we might propose. His general order was recognizing that huge numbers of refugees had fled from the Kentucky countryside and were taking refuge outside of Louisville and other cities. He declared that all colored persons in the city of Louisville are advised at once to seek employment. To enable them to do so, it is ordered that the provost marshal of the post of Louisville, upon the application of any colored person, will issue a pass to such person and for his or her family. Conductors and managers of all railroads, steamboats, ferry boats, and other means of travel out of and from the city of Louisville will, upon the presentation of such pass and the payment of the usual fare, transport the persons named therein. This officially liberated people to go and seek work and to travel to do that. There was some very blurry lines here between the ending of slavery as a formal institution and the granting of the opportunity to earn a living for themselves, however. A delegation of black men wrote to President Johnson in June 1865 from Kentucky saying, "Kentucky is the only spot within all the bounds of the United States where the people of color have no rights whatsoever in either law or in fact. We most humbly petition and pray you that you will not remove martial law from the state, nor her noble military commander under whose protection we have almost learned to realize the blessings of a home and under the safeguard and sanction of law. The state of Kentucky has contributed of her colored sons over 30,000 soldiers who have poured out their blood lavishly in defense of their country and their country's flag, and we confidently hope this blood will be carried to our credit in any political settlement of our native state." Which brings us from June of 1865, when that petition was written, to July 4th, another candidate for Kentucky's Juneteenth. Part of the celebrations in Louisville were a reading of the Declaration of Independence at the state fairgrounds, which are now in Crescent Hill. General Palmer was offered a golden chariot by a circus that was in town. This is an ad from the Frankfurt newspaper where the circus moved after it left Louisville, so you can maybe see an engraving there of the actual chariot that he rode in. And as he was coming back into town from this reading of the Declaration of Independence, he was met by a crowd of estimated 20 or 30,000 people who were celebrating this picnic, which was advertised in the Louisville newspapers, down 3rd Street, south of what is now the U of L campus. And these thousands of people had come to Louisville expecting a Kentucky Juneteenth moment, expecting that Palmer would officially announce that slavery was over in Kentucky. Of course, he had no ability to do that. And so he hedged his bets and said, my countrymen, you are substantially free. And there was a lot riding on substantially. Of course, he knew that wasn't true. A few weeks later, on July 29th, 1865, 159 years ago today, General Palmer wrote a letter to President Johnson explaining the demographics of emancipation as they stood at the end of that month. He said 230,000 Kentuckians had been enslaved before the war. 28,000 and change had enlisted in the Army and Navy. Assuming 2.5 dependent family members per man, that was around 72,000 women and children had been freed. Assuming 3.5 dependents per enlistee, that would have made around 100,000 free people. 1/2 of the remainder had belonged to rebels and were therefore free by virtue of the Confiscation Acts, leaving a total of some 50 or 65,000 legally unfree Kentuckians, even if they were in a position where they could begin to exercise their freedom by seeking work for themselves. And the majority of political leaders in Kentucky were intent on keeping that way. General Palmer had been sued in numerous local courts for the crime, still on the books of Kentucky, at the time of aiding slaves to escape. He was indicted in the Bourbon Circuit Court by Congressman Brutus Clay for assisting 40 people and by U.S. Senator Garrett Davis for assisting 10 people. One of those cases came to court in Jefferson County right as slavery was experiencing its last days of legal existence. On December 5th, 1865, as General Palmer was sitting in court, everyone was waiting on a telegram from Montgomery, Alabama, trying to see if the Alabama General Assembly had ratified the 13th Amendment, giving it the number of states necessary to become a constitutional amendment. Right as sun went down, word came in, the case was dismissed. General Palmer walks out onto the steps of the courthouse there and declares to a crowd of gathered African Americans, a Kentucky judge has declared you all free. Next day, December 6th, 1865, a number of other states fall into line as a necessary step for rejoining the Union. North Carolina and Georgia also ratified the 13th Amendment. Kentucky, of course, rejected the 13th Amendment twice during that time, once in 1865, again in 1866, and of course ratified the amendment in 1976. The next day, General Palmer issued a final order, December 7th, 1865, saying, whatever doubts may have heretofore existed on the subject, slavery has now ceased to exist in Kentucky, and with it fall all the laws of the state heretofore in force intended for its support. Of course, this was still a long way to wrest civil rights beyond mere freedom from a state government still in the hands of enslavers. The black right of testimony against whites in Kentucky courts was not extended until the Freedmen's Bureau threatened to prosecute Klan murders in federal court. Black testimony was only allowed in courts where juries could be packed with sympathetic whites who guaranteed acquittals. And suffrage for black men wouldn't come until 1870 with the 15th Amendment, which was met with paramilitary violence led by the Kentucky militia armed with state weapons. So, which date do we choose? All of them if we want. I'm a historian. The more holidays that we have celebrating American history, I'm not going to complain. And this doesn't mean by any means that Paducah should give up August 8th in favor of any of these. Let's celebrate them all. I think the more valuable course for all of us to take is to follow a path laid out by a national civic group called History Made by Us, which is a network of museums and historical organizations including the Filson, dedicating to inspiring young people through the power of the past. They've instituted a nationwide civic season that runs from Juneteenth through July 4th. It encourages exhibitions, programs, lectures, but also instruction, acts of public service, volunteering, and learning about local government. As the Made by Us team says, there's no end to making a more perfect union. Thank you.
Thank you. That was very educational. I mean, I, as a history person, so I always a former history teacher, I always believed that content area was the most important one, and I think that you proved it today. So there's no questions there. But do we have any members with any questions? Senator Berg.
First of all, I want to thank you for a very, very interesting and enlightening presentation. And I just want to make the comment, and I think it's a sad comment on our educational system, that I was born, raised, and almost exclusively educated in the state of Kentucky. And I know none of these dates. I know none of this history. And that has got to be fixed. Because if you don't know your own history, you are destined to repeat it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Co-chair.
Thank you to the co-chair, and thank you for your presentation. We talk often about Juneteenth as being one day. And I thought what was so interesting about your presentation is the seasonal approach to how complicated really Kentucky's past is on this issue, that it isn't one time here or there, that there actually is a pretty long storied history. And we did a lot of work in Lexington on Cheapside, obviously, to redo and to remove statues as part of those conversations, to rename that area as someplace that people felt welcomed by. And that was really important, I think, for Lexington's own challenges around this subject, to be honest with you. And it was a really important one for us as a community. Can you talk a little bit more about the civic season of 2 weeks? What are other cities or states doing to commemorate that we might think about?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a wonderful question. I think really, this merges into a lot of the planning that's going on in the museum and cultural field right now for 2026 and the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, which is, of course, not just going to focus on what happened in 1776, but really this celebration of the ideals of the Republic and the celebration of American democracy and the encouragement of participation. I think that's the really active part, is getting especially young people, but everyone, quite frankly, sort of actively participating in commemoration research, understanding that these stories are rooted in the neighborhoods and the cities that they know very well. That national events, just because they're commemorated, are not limited there. And I think we should really hold up these local examples as really inspirational. Kentucky's story is in a lot of ways more complex than the story nationally, because we were so divided at this moment, still trying to reconstruct this state's political government after a time of violent revolution, quite frankly. And I feel like there's a lot that we can examine and learn from.
I appreciate that. And just to follow up, Harrodsburg just had their 250th celebration, and I was so proud of that city for what they did. And they really went after the good, the bad, the ugly, a part of their history. And I think we're really, to your point, reaching an interesting time in our country where we're celebrating these kinds of things and really taking the time to take 2 or 3 weeks and go down that walk and really educate in a way that is more comprehensive than just a little bit of time. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Excellent question. Senator Westerfield?
Thank you, Chairman. You may have mentioned this and I didn't catch it. How many states have codified this holiday?
Juneteenth. Mm-hmm. I don't know about state adaptation. I know it's a federal holiday, but I don't know how many states have worked that in there, actually. It's a great question.
Is that something that the center would know or could find, or that staff could know or could find? I was curious. We haven't taken action to do that, which is regrettable, because that certainly seems like the lowest possible hanging fruit that there is. I know the governor, I think, just issued an executive order, which he should be commended for. But it seems like the legislature ought to take that up. But I was curious how many states had done that. Thank you, Chairman.
Excellent question. Also, I think we get staff, or we probably could figure it out here. 28 states is the first number off the board as far as states that have codified it. And DC, so 28 plus DC, so 28 and a half. One of the things that I find interesting about this particular topic also is, looking at it from a from a policy perspective. So we passed the Emancipation Proclamation. So you're a fourth grader taking U.S. history and you learn about the Emancipation Proclamation. You think at that moment all slaves are free.
Yes.
You know, and I think that if you were to poll 99% of people, they would be like, well, yeah, it happened then. And I took an African American history course at UK with Dr. Smith, superstar. I was fortunate to teach his daughter in high school when I was a teacher. But and he also talked about the transition from the Emancipation Proclamation into what society looked like. I was born in upstate New York, first generation American, understanding kind of the ethnic and the racial issues of the United States. Understand that we have overcome a lot of things in the past, slavery, the quota system, Executive Order 9066, with our Asian Americans during World War II. I thought that once the Emancipation Proclamation happened, there would be a mass exodus of newly freed African Americans to the North. But that wasn't the case. And I was like, well, I guess, very selfishly, I thought, I'd assume, the dads would go and then send the money home. When that actually wasn't the case. The moms would go. Because in the North, most of the opportunity for freed slaves was assistance in homes, housekeepers. And dads really struggled because their skill set was agriculture, and the North was more industrial. And it was a very slow process. There were a lot of families didn't want to leave the area that they we're free now, and we can kind of go out on our own. It wasn't anything what I imagined. I thought that everyone knew on the day, and I thought that it would be a mass exodus. And I think it's important. That's why understanding history, and I think even specifically going into the weeds on this particular Kentucky history and understanding exactly what it was like. And I think that in a day where we are in 2024, knowledge is even more important on these particular topics to understand and have empathy towards the struggles of others. And I think that that's really important, and I think that this brings up a really good conversation point. So thank you for your presentation today.
Thanks so much.
Yep. All right, next up, discussion on elementary education, the Promise Academy at William Wells Brown Elementary School. Really excited about your presentation today. Today we have Dr. Ebony Hutchinson, principal, Linzel Brundage, behavior coach, Misty Lynch, English learner teacher, Carrie Mueller, gifted and talented teacher, and Amanda Stewart, MTSS lead. And we have Dr. Bill Bradford here from the district. So,
ready?
If you all wouldn't mind introducing yourselves and starting your presentation.
All right, we'll start down the line. We'll start with Ms. Stewart here.
All right, my name is Amanda Stewart. I am an instructional coach and also MTSS lead. If you're unfamiliar with MTSS, that's our system of interventions from Tier 1, which is core content, all the way through any students that are struggling with academics or behavior needs.
I'm Linzel Brundage, and I'm the behavior coach, also the PBIS coach. That's Positive Behavior Intervention and Systems, basically the positivity on preventing behavior.
Ebony Hutchinson, principal.
I'm Misty Lynch, English learners teacher. At our school, we serve 23 to 25% of our population speaks another language at home or had that as their home language. We serve 9 languages, 12 countries at this time.
And I'm Carrie Mueller. I'm the gifted and talented resource teacher, and we serve academic students, but also visual and performing arts gifted children.
All right, so we just want to share a little bit about our journey the last several years. I started at William Wells Brown. This is my 5th year here as principal, and just a little bit about our experience. You see some of our students and staff in this picture. when I started, we knew that we had to take on a rebranding of our school, who we were, what was our purpose, telling our own story. One of the things I challenged our staff with a couple of years ago was telling our story, because if we don't, someone else will. And a lot of times it's not the right story. And so if we're not the ones telling the story from the inside out, sometimes it's the outside folks that want to tell the story and they really don't know what's going on inside. So a lot of our rebranding was hiring staff that were committed, that were invested in the community and the students there, families, making sure that they knew the purpose of school. A lot of it was changing mindset. I remember speaking to a student my very first year. I started in COVID. Some people think I was a little crazy starting being an elementary principal of a turnaround school during COVID. But there was a student who was having a rough afternoon and had to talk him off the ledge a little bit. And so, one of his comments was, the school's stupid. That's why we have low test scores. So then I had to explain to him, do you know where the test scores come from? And so he did not understand. He didn't understand that the work that I do every day, day in and day out, are the things that are shown outward. It's not just the district or state or whomever that decides to place a number on the school. And so it was convincing or letting students and parents know that the reason for coming to school is to learn, and this is why we're here every day. So getting the student buy-in, getting them to understand that, they have a hand in what's happening in their education every day. And it's not something that we are doing to them. It's something that they are taking a part of every single day. We have a welcoming environment. Tomorrow is our first day of school. So if you would like to come out at 7:15 tomorrow morning and clap in our students, it is a great experience. But every morning we start school at 7:15. Our school resource officer is there every morning. One of the first people they see, along with myself and other staff members, they're walking into music. It is someplace that they want to be, they want to come to every day. And, I have a colleague who talks about making school irresistible, and that is one of the things that we strive to do in our building. So our mission and vision, you see here, once I started 5 years ago, we came together, worked with Dr. Stacy Scott, who was from Creative Leadership, and helped us to develop our mission and vision based on what we wanted and dreamed for our school. And so our mission here, we the Promise Academy at William Wells Brown, are a caring, committed community with high expectations, accountability, growth mindset, and positivity, empowering confident learners and leaders of tomorrow in an evolving global society. And our vision, we as leaders of today will achieve excellence and uplift the community through our promise to build resilient scholars and leaders of tomorrow. And our staff, we embody this every day. We revisit this. This just isn't something that is on a piece of paper or that sits in the front of our building. This is something that is revisited at every team meeting, weekly, monthly. We had our opening day today with all of our staff this morning, and so it was revisited there. So this is something that we live by, not just words on a page. A little bit about our demographics. We talk about our school is the minority. The majority of the kids in our school, you can see here, you see the free and reduced lunch status, technically at 88.06%, but we're working on getting those free and reduced lunch forms in because I believe we're about 95%. Our homeless indicator, you see there as well. Ms. Lynch talked a little bit about our EL students there. You can see 25.37% students are EL. Special education, we've got about 19.03. And then gifted, you see there on the corner. We've got right now just about 3.73%, and we are working diligently to make sure we're identifying students. There were no students identified when I started in gifted and talented, but Ms. Millard on the end has made sure that we are identifying the students because they are there. We're just making sure that they have the opportunity to qualify in that area. And then in the center, you can see our demographics for race as well. So we're 65% Black or African American, 16% Hispanic, 9% white, 2 or more races 9%, and then 1% Indian.
A big part of our change was a transformational leadership shift and vision. As a CSI school, it was essential that the product that we were presenting was changed. The children don't change. It's the adults who make the change. We established an administrative team that had the knowledge, the skills, and the disposition to do the work. A new principal was chosen to lead the school, and the administrative team possessed what we like to call a positive presupposition. Everyone can learn, and everyone wants to learn, teachers and students. This transformational leadership style, combined with true servant leadership, has led us to this change. We are intentional every day about doing the right work.
So as part of this journey, I want to tell a little bit of our data. You can see we are not where we want to be yet. We believe in growth more than anything for our children. So you'll see for reading and math, we made a change of 9.5 index points. Okay, so we went our indicator score went up to a 50.5, which moved us out of the red and into the yellow. Our science, social studies, and combined writing moved to a 43.9. Again, we moved into the yellow. Our EL is just like astounding for us. So our EL ended up in the blue indicator with an 86.5, and our quality schools climate survey and placed us at 70.7. So if you can go ahead to the next slide. This is our story. So a few years ago, we were at 31.5 as our index. And in 2 years, we have moved to a 50.5. So we have made a gain of 9.5 points. Or, I'm sorry, not there. Yeah, 11.4 change in our proficiency data, which gave us a 9.5 index change. If you look at our science, social studies, and combined writing, we've moved that from 2 years ago from 32.5 to a 43.9. So there is growth, astounding growth over just the last couple of years. Once we had our students back in the building from COVID, and we are boots on the ground running with our kids on a daily basis. Our children want to come to school, they want to be in the classroom, and they want to learn from the highest expertise that we have. So you can see a shift in our scores. So you'll see in the first graph, the red is our novice reduction. So we went for reading. We started with 60.4% of our students 2 years ago under a new system as being novice. 60.4%. That, more than half of our kids were falling in that novice range. That's just unacceptable. All means all. Every student needs to achieve at high levels. So as of last year, we reduced that to 49%. So we've made an 11.4% shift. And our proficient distinguished students have gone from 20.1 up to a 33. For math, you'll see similar gains. We were at 61.4% of our students novice, yet again, and you will see that shift. 56.3. You will see that shift in novice. And yes, there was a drop. You see that 0. Those scores are not released at the state level, so they are not accessible to all public. And then you'll see our proficiency increase there as well. So although our proficiency is not where we want it, the astounding growth that our students are showing every day with this work is just mind-blowing. Our EL students' growth, they are some of our highest achieving students in our building. And they come to our table with so much different diverse background, and they'll come in for a year, they get to be exempt. So we're asking our EL students to move from being non-English readers, in most cases as a first year, to being able to be a proficient reader in year 2. And so although we might not be a proficient yet for them, that is still a struggle for us. The growth is astronomical. And as I talk about growth, these are our district MAP scores. So as a district-wide, elementary, middle, high school, in the spring of 2019 for reading, we were 46th from the top at achieving. And last year, we landed in 3rd. So we were the 3rd highest school in the district for growth on our MAP reading test. Talk about celebrations. For math, we went from the 44th in the district, and you can see that slow climb to first in growth in the district. So we had a lot of celebration for the growth in our students.
So we knew that for our students to succeed, that we needed to really create a culture of belonging. We wanted everyone to feel like they belonged to something. So with that, we worked really hard to provide them with different kinds of experiences and clubs and different things that you may not see at another school. You can kind of see in these pictures, we've got pictures of our basketball team, our cheer club, Girls with Code, some of our student ambassadors that help navigate the building when there are visitors that come in, maybe like community partners, or even you all. If you all come in, you all will actually meet with a student ambassador that will walk you around. As well as the house system, we adopted that from Ron Clark. Our students students have taken to that and kind of excelled. They love that the group, and they love the ability to be able to earn points for that. Also, providing them with experiences that they may not be able to do on their own. Every year, our 5th grade takes a trip to DC, and it's actually one of the ones that all of the 5th grade teachers as well as students really look forward to, because they learn a lot on that you just can't teach in a book. And here's a quick video from one of our students last year.
Come on, work.
My name is Chris Matendo, and I attend William S. Brown Elementary School. My favorite book is Diary of a Wimpy Kid, and why it's my favorite book is because I like the way that he thought of the writing process and the illustrations that he put in the book, and I would probably like to write one of those too. My favorite subject is math because it's easiest for me. It doesn't take me a lot of time to understand what they're talking about. My favorite teacher is Miss Schwindeman because she's a fun person to hang around with. One of the clubs I'm in is the Chicken Foot Club, and I'm the leader of that club. And the sport I play is basketball. I'm in basketball because I enjoy the sport. It's a team sport. When something goes bad, it's not just that one person goes, everybody goes with him. The best part of the school day is when we go to specials. I think that is because we get to go around, have fun, and the teachers are really cool and they're really nice. What I want to be when I grow up is I want to play sports, or I want to be a doctor. The reason why I want to play sports is because it's fun and enjoyable. Why I want to be a doctor is because I love to help people. To be a coach, we get a lot of praise when we go around. We get talked about a lot. The last year, they were talking about we're not the best school. Now we're at a CSI, so that's really happy for me. My name is Chris, and I'm more than my test score.
No, if you try to go back to see. We'll just talk about it. I think a couple slides got cut out, but we will talk a little bit about how we looked at closing the opportunity gap versus the achievement gap. So looking at providing high quality education for our students through several features. And so one of the things is rigorous, relevant, and equitable education, and making sure that our teachers are getting the best training. So being able to attend national conferences. We've sent people all over, I feel like all over the nation to different conferences. And one of the things that they're required to do is to come back and share that learning with staff. And so there's several things that we've seen in the classroom within instruction that teachers have been able to put into place. So school culture, I know Lindsay talked a little bit about that. Did you want to talk?
Just about school culture, like we learned that if we're asking these students to work hard, then we also have to play hard. So, I mean, every morning, like we come into music, we're dancing, we're singing, we're having a good time. And some people may think, oh, they're just doing that because it's the first day of school. No, we do this every day. And the kids, I mean, they absolutely love it and they eat it up. We also make it a point to call students by their names and learn their names because, I mean, who doesn't want to be called by their name instead of being like, hey, hey, student, we also talked about we wanted to provide a place where kids feel loved and they feel celebrated. And so those are kind of some of our big cursors that we push as far as when we onboard staff. We let them know that relationships are key here, and that's how we move our students forward.
Our professional learning community, all of our teachers, that was one of the things we really focused on the last couple of years of being a school of learners. So, I'm the lead learner, knowing that every day we are learning so that our kids can learn. If we are not constantly learning, our kids are not constantly learning. Putting in structures in place so that teachers are making sure that they are teaching the standards to the highest point so that they know that they're providing the best instruction for kids in the classroom every day.
We are very intentional about collective efficacy as a group. We have intentionally built a culture of collaboration. We have a collective responsibility. These are our kids. Every kid in the building, honestly, I know their name. 300 kids, I know their name. It takes leveraging all of the adults with the skills that we have for all children to learn at high levels. It's not acceptable for most. All children must learn at high levels. We also have built a culture of shared leadership. It's not just the administrative team. We have a guiding coalition, which is a group of teacher leaders who come together to examine what is going well in our school. Why is it going well? To examine what things do we need to improve on. Once we do that, we create task forces that go out and look at data we find and do action research to make sure that we are providing the best instruction that we can for our children. This is intentional and happens every day.
So you talked about data, like that data drives everything we do. So, and it's to ensure that all students are learning at the highest level. So there is no man left behind. We also, teachers, Ebony talked about teachers getting what they need, not just our students, but teachers are allowed to choose professional development that allows them to grow. Because we know if teachers are learning, students are learning. And I think the biggest thing that working under Ebony is collaboration. Like we work together, and it doesn't matter if it's one of Misty's students, her EL students, it's all of our students. If it's a gifted student, it doesn't matter. We are all there to problem solve. How do we help this student? How do we help the family? We are a family, so that's what we do.
So as part of that, we've heard collaboration, that efficacy piece, the school culture. So we've been able to retain teachers. Since our fearless leader has joined us, we have had such turnover in the amount of teachers that don't leave. You're so used to hearing teacher turnover, teacher turnover, teacher turnover. Not at William Wells Brown. Like our highly trained staff gets retained every year. When we do have staff that move on, oftentimes it's for a move up to a leadership role or another area within the district. It's not necessarily a lateral move. So staff retention has been a huge part of what's allowed us to grow as a building. So it has helped with our consistency and stability in the building. It has helped us hone our experiences and our expertise. It's built that school culture. We've been able to, so the culture, it's that twofold piece. The culture helps us keep teachers, but keeping teachers is what's helped us build that culture. That professional development piece. We don't have to start at square one every year. We can continue to build upon what we learned the year before. We had PLC 101 last year. This year we did PLC 201. So we are able to take it to the next level each and every year. And putting all this together equates to student achievement.
So just share just a little bit about who we are and the growth that we've seen. We are a Promise Academy, but we look at that as something that is positive. It is something that we are promising our students and our community and our families every day. So we always talk about the sky. You hear the quote about the sky is not the limit. We talk about the sky is not the limit. It's just a view. The kids can go wherever they want, along with our staff. That's all we have for you.
That is an excellent presentation.
We're a little passionate. I don't know if you're
Just a little bit. Yeah, just a little bit. I went to one of your pep rallies after the test scores came out. The passion's there. There's no doubt about that. I know we've got several questions here, but I just wanted to take this opportunity to shine a light on what you all are doing. You know, you're in 3rd Street. It's a tough part of town in Lexington. Okay, half of your building is a community center, and these are the results. You all have cracked the code. You've cracked the code. We need to figure out what you're doing and duplicate it. Okay, because there's a lot of discussion about education, what's working, what's not. I'm a firm believer in growth. Growth is where it's at. Proficiency will take care of itself if we're growing kids and growing staff members. So I think that that's one of the key parts here. But I do know that we've got a couple of questions from around the room.
I want to go first.
Representative Kulkarni.
Thank you, co-chairs, and thank you all for your presentation. It's very I'm inspired. It's a very happy, wholesome success story. I wanted to ask you to the chairman's point about cracking the code. What would you consider, apart from your own passion and dedication and commitment? What do you consider as the single biggest factor in your success, and what do you consider the biggest obstacle or challenge?
If I said, gosh, there's lots. So I
You
think
can
that
only pick one each.
I feel like I'm the interview. This is the thing I ask teachers when I sit in interviews. I'm like, you only can pick one. Now I'm on the other side. I think expectations have been the biggest shift for us. High expectations of knowing the kids can and they will, and we're not going to stop until they get there. And the biggest obstacle, is that what was the second part, I think? I think some of it was shifting family and community mindset. So for us, it's once we got the kids in the building, we're like, they're ours. You know, we can do what we need to do. It's like we got them, and we're turning. The tides are turning. We talk about, and we've talked several years about when we get new students, like our kids who have been there, like we need to teach them the William Wells Brown way because this is not how we do things here. And so a lot of it was getting our students, our scholars, to communicate that to at home, and also bringing the community and families in so that they could see this is what school is all about and this is what we're doing here.
And with that, there was a huge shift in attendance because of that. So as we got our kids to buy in, we had that expectation mind shift, and we had our students mind shift change, that high expectations, and they started to get their parents on board. We've made the school a community in which children want to come every day, and when they're here, we can teach them. And so there was a huge shift in that aspect of the work that we do once we were able to get both the student and the community buy-in together.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Representative Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm sorry I was late. I was at a funeral. Father Norman Fisher in Lexington. I was at his funeral, and I saw that you all, I knew that you all on the schedule today, so I needed to get here. But my question, and it's not on 3rd Street. It's on 5th
Street.
in Shropshire.
5th Street.
But it's in my neighborhood. And just wanted to congratulate you on the efforts that you all have made and letting the sunshine in. And there has been conversation routinely about William Wells Brown and it being the lowest performing school in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. And that is right. Is that a correct statement?
Not anymore.
No. I'm not saying that.
I was like,
I mean, I'm appreciative of
I got you.
of your report, but I think it's very important. And I think the magic sauce and breaking the code is something that we can spread around for all of our children in Kentucky and to all of our schools. Because if they can see it, if they can feel it, they can achieve it. And obviously you all have done some of that. So what is your secret sauce that we could spread across all of Kentucky through KDA so that folk will understand and know that it can be done?
I mean, I believe it's our ingredients. So the slide that was missing on here, do you want to read out those that we each kind of talked about? Yeah. There. So I think these are our ingredients to what our secret sauce is.
So you all should have in your packet, do you all have Closing the Opportunity Gap? It has the picture on it? Okay.
Yes. Somehow that cut out
Somehow
over here.
It's not on here.
So those are the pieces we feel have been, or we know have been ingredients to the positive trajectory that our school is currently on. So our staff, it's funny because I was talking with an employee the other day who talked about the expectation, the rigor that we expect in our classrooms, but it's not just in our classrooms. It's our custodial team, it's our cafeteria staff, it's our front office staff. So it's that expectation of excellence throughout the building. And not letting up on that. And so one of the things we've talked about, and our superintendent has talked about, our one job is student achievement, no matter what our job is. So that's been the thing that we've really preached the last couple of years, is no matter if I am cleaning the hallways or I'm serving food in the cafeteria, whatever that is, every job in our school ties right back to student achievement. And so if I'm not doing my part, that's a missing piece of that puzzle.
I think as the public reads about schools like ours, they view this as an achievement gap. It's an opportunity gap. Mm-hmm. Our children deserve the same opportunities to learn as everyone else. And if they don't have those, then it is our job, our responsibility to figure out how to deliver that to them, because they deserve it. And student achievement will, by filling this opportunity gap, the achievement will come.
I think also, and it sounds so simple, but building relationships is our number one goal. And that starts with staff, with each other. And we also have to build relationships with our children. They do not learn from people they don't like. And that goes back to what Ms. Hutchinson said. That goes to the custodians and the cafeteria workers. When you come in and get your breakfast in the morning, you want to be greeted with, "Good morning, we're so glad you're here." And so that is something that we've worked really hard. Families should know that we're glad you're sending your best to us, and we are going to do the best that we can with them.
We've got a few questions.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Just one more.
Yes,
Just
sir.
a
Go ahead,
thing.
Representative Brown.
I'd just like to say congratulations. In the northeast side of Lexington, and people deem our children as being throwaway children and unsuccessful because of the socioeconomics or the demographics that they come from. But the biggest opportunity and the biggest challenge is to take those children and make them and help them become the geniuses that they were born to be. And I would just like to commend you all. It seems that you all are on the right track, and I don't hear anybody talking about William Wells Brown anymore being at the lowest level of achievement. So thank you very much for what you're doing. I need to come and see you all.
Anytime.
No, I need to come and see y'all. Y'all need to invite me so I can come, because if you don't invite me, I may not, I get busy and I rip and run, but invite me please to come and talk to the kids. It's very important for the children to understand that they are important, and we need to, and you all obviously are putting that in them. So I commend you all on what you all are doing, and keep up the good work. And maybe you all can be a model. Some of you all can, no, don't go anywhere. I was gonna say you all can go to other places and, help other folk understand what you all have done and are doing at William Wells Brown. But thank you very much for the work that you're doing. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
No problem. Co-Chair Bledsoe.
Thank you, Co-Chair. Thank you all so much. Being from Fayette County, you're right. No one talks about it anymore. In fact, everyone's going, "Did you hear what's happening at William Wells Brown?" Which is a culture of excellence. And that starts at the top and goes all the way down. And no question, that's what people are talking about. So well done. I hope you take this as a compliment and as a statewide cheerleading, if you will, for what you're doing in Fayette County. When that came out a couple years ago about just the crisis that the school was in, there was a large push for the community to come in, be mentors, be tutors, be specialists, help. Has that continued? You didn't mention too much about the external partnerships, and I know that one time it seemed like everybody was going to volunteer at William S. Brown. Have you seen much of that still, or is that part of your story?
We definitely do have a lot of community partnerships. Ms. Westerfield is our family and community engagement liaison, and she is the one that's in charge of kind of like the face of the school, who is making sure to pull those community partners in. We've also tried to streamline that, because sometimes I think when the public story is let's help this poor school, you get kind of anybody and everybody that wants to come in and do all the things. But we also know that we have to build the strong leadership within the school to say this is really what we need, and this is what's going to push our students forward. And so that's what we've really been able to do now, is to streamline that. So when volunteers come in, it's, hey, we need you to work with this small group of kids in first grade, or we need you to do this mentoring piece. So something that's going to be truly, this is helping the school and the student body, versus I'm just putting my name on a plaque that says I've been in the school. But absolutely, we have a ton of community partners that are in and out of our building all the time.
I'm glad to hear that, because I think that was I saw that a lot from groups that I know who went to volunteer and was kind of, hey, we need to start spreading the love around. They're not the only school in Fayette County that needs some extra external support. And I really applaud your efforts to be specific about what you're looking for, because you're right, people do want to help, they often don't know what to do. And sometimes it is just helping in a certain specific area. So the more specific you can be in helping us figure that out, I think that's really awesome. And I just really applaud what you're doing, and we were very, very proud of seeing your success. So well done.
Thank you.
Senator Westerfield.
Thank you, Chairman. Last week, in the Juvenile Justice Oversight Council meeting, and in the month before that in the JJOC, there was a discussion from a group out of Nashville called the RAFA Institute. They do juvenile restorative justice. It's a fantastic program, and it's victim-centered and offender-centered both. It's healing for both. They talked about, and in the JJOC meeting last week, it may have also come up in the judiciary meeting also, because we heard about some juvenile justice policy from the CSG Justice Center. There was a discussion about parental engagement and involvement, which is a problem that Kentucky has and every other state in that country has. And some of the things that you mentioned a few minutes ago made me think about whether or not you're tracking that. And I'd be really interested to know whether it's district-wide or frankly, any of the 178 school districts Kentucky has, something like that. I don't know that I've ever asked this question. Don't know that I've ever heard this, and I'm not on the education committee, so maybe somebody knows and I don't. I'd love to know what level of involvement you feel you're getting from parents. And sometimes it's a function of parents just not being responsible. More often than not, at least in the experience I've had as a prosecutor and as a policymaker, when I've talked with parents or talked with program facilitators and organizations, private sector and whatnot, that try to cater to juveniles, it's a matter of resources and assets that those parents, the communities that they live in, whether they're minority or not. The example I used last week was a site visit I had with NCSL up in the Bronx in New York. They have the same problem there that we have here, though that environment is completely different, that very urban setting, more urban than anything Kentucky has. I mean, it's the Bronx. I'm curious whether or not you're tracking parental involvement and how your school if you are, how your school tracks with or stacks up against other schools in the district or around the state. And if you're not, why not? And I'm not fussing. I've just never heard anybody say if they're looking at that or paying attention to that. And if they're going one step further and identifying where there isn't as much involvement, why? If you can identify that. So that's a lot to unpack there, but I'm curious. And it's an issue that I think you talked about how you've seen better attendance. I think you mentioned you've seen really clearly you've seen incredible improvement, and you are all to be commended. It's a fantastic turnaround that you've made, but that's all to the good. And having families and the communities that those children are from, again, regardless of race, regardless of whether it's Lexington or Christian County, whatever, it's only to the benefit of those kids involved in those in the school. So I'm curious about that. Thank you, Chair.
Does anybody want to go?
You can.
So our family involvement has, I mean, it's out the wazoo, I feel like, coming in. Our family and community engagement liaison is tracking family involvement, family participation at family nights. I mean, we went from, I think before COVID, few numbers of families coming to now families wrapped around the sidewalk, and we have to like, wait, give us 5 more minutes. We don't start till 5 o'clock. Families coming in. A lot of this started a couple of years ago. We started a family VIP day where COVID was kind of a blessing and a curse a little bit for us. It was obviously a curse. We were out of school for a while, but it was a little bit of a blessing because it was a hard reset for us with school culture, and also bringing families in to let them in on our secret of what our school culture is and what it's about. So our family VIP day, families were able to come in and like experience the day in the life of their student. So to see why attendance is so important, because at 7:45 we're starting with a school-wide morning meeting every day till 8 o'clock, and instruction is starting right at 8 until the bell rings at 3:30. So parents were able to come in, and then from those days, they wanted to come to, health system family picnics, to family learning nights. And it wasn't just like they come for, obviously, parent conferences, but family learning nights, meeting families where they are. We have a family resource coordinator who's able to provide resources for families. We have a fabulous student support team. Mr. Brundage is our behavior coach lead, who's able to reach out to families and provide them with resources. So I feel like we are teaching and supporting families just as much as we're supporting the students in our building, which in turn gives us the family support and buy-in that we have that come in the building all the time. So I know that one of the things that our family and community engagement liaison is working on this year is doing some family courses, once a month during the day as well. Also in the evening, that are just focused on family, I don't want to say issues, but things that the families need. Some of the things I know we talked about with Mr. Brundage, we talked about behavior, which if we're dealing with behavior in a positive manner at school, but we're dealing with it a different way at home. So it kind of brings that home to school piece together. So families coming to learn about those things during the school day as well.
Mr. Chairman, one brief follow-up.
Oh, yes, sir.
Okay.
And you don't have to answer this. If you got an answer, great. If you don't, I encourage you to track this going forward so that future committees, future meetings of this committee can investigate and look at that and make policy and fund appropriately what we need to. I'm curious, you gave the demographic breakdown of your students. I wonder if you're tracking parental involvement relative to those demographic groups, A, and B, and I mentioned this in my earlier question. Is anybody tracking what the obstacles are for those families to be involved?
Mm-hmm.
And that broken down by those same demographic groups would be fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I'm making assumptions about what you're likely to see, what those impediments are, based on any number of factors. Some of them things the legislature controls, some of them we can't. A lot of them we could help with funding and policy decisions. But I think that data picture would be fascinating to see. Thank you.
Member Pryor?
Thank you. And actually, my question is going to somewhat follow up on my colleagues down there. Thank you all for your presentation. Thank you all for your work. As somebody who is from a long line of educators, family, and friends, I absolutely love educators and the work and the commitment that you all have, largely because you all, as you've demonstrated from your presentation, assume responsibility for every child and their well-being, regardless of what they walk through the door with. And what is interesting and great and noble about that is also on this side, although I am not a representative, I run the Louisville Urban League in Louisville, Kentucky. But what is also frustrating about that is that I also recognize that you all are not responsible for everything that walks through your door. The challenges that students have that are responsible for this opportunity gap, most of them our educators did not create. Our school systems did not create. And you all are having to deal with those. And so, kind of to the point of Mr. Westerfield, I'm going to actually give you all the opportunity to tell us what are some of the community challenges facing your students and families that are making your jobs more difficult, because this body and other bodies need to know where else we need to go from a policy standpoint, because it's not always in the educational space that we need to be doing the most amount of work. Sometimes it's other spaces that may need our attention or the attention of legislators, so that we can make your jobs easier when it comes to educating kids. And so where, if at all, are you all seeing other pain points for your students and families?
I think our kids are concerned about violence. They're concerned about violence in their community. They're concerned about violence nationally. We have very open conversations about current events to try to help children process and understand. From my population is English learners, and seeing people come from out of country, the perception nationally of people who are not born in the United States is a barrier. It's a deficit mindset, and we are very intentional about changing that to an asset mindset. During COVID, many of my families were not coming to the school because they were afraid to be in the streets, to be known that they spoke another language. So our kids bring that to school.
I believe another area that we've seen tremendous concerns with in the last couple of years is that many of our students are homeless. That percentage does not, I think, actually equate to where we really stand. They just don't report it. They're living in their cars, in the Walmart parking lot, with the 3 dogs and the mouse and their whole family. We are helping our families find hotels to stay in through our FRC and our faith.
Cars, jobs.
Helping them get jobs so that they can pay the rent. Their houses are being condemned while they're living in them, and they have no place to go. So that is something very heavy that many of our children bring to school with them every day.
I feel like we're educators, yes, but all the things that my colleagues have talked about, we jump in and help with. So when somebody doesn't have a car, we're all like, how can we get them one? When they don't have a job, who knows somebody looking for someone for work? When they're living at their cousin's house, who can go pick them up so they can be at school? So that's where this collective efficacy, like we are all hands on deck all the time because we can't fail. We can't fail our kids.
That's an excellent question, sir. My background in education, I was assistant principal at Winburn Middle School for 6 years, and we face a lot of the same obstacles. When the gentleman asked a question, like a solid critical question, like critical answers have to come from that, and that's where change happens, and that's where things, if we want to song and dance and we want to talk about different things and, have a big meeting and then we go off into our lives and just kind of carry on, and we haven't done anything. We've wasted everybody's time. Senator Westerfield, you talked about, restorative practices, restorative justice. And, that's mocked around the country. That's mocked. There's evidence showing that it's effective, but it's mocked. Oh, the kids are just going to sit in a circle and sing Kumbaya and apologize, and everything's going to, that's the perception. The reality is that kids are healing, and they're learning a process of how to disagree, but be civil. And that's where, we have got to venture into those places where we are going to catch flack from the public based on perception. We have to continue to do those things. We have to continue to support. I know the families that I worked with, oftentimes documentation was the issue that they didn't want to become involved. That anything government related was a place of fear. And I don't want to go there and potentially expose myself to whatever. We have families that might not have done well in school at all, and their lasting pieces were, well, I was suspended, I was expelled, I was sent to alternative schools I didn't want to go to. Their experiences were really, really terrible, so they don't want to become involved. The hard thing about parental involvement in schools is that the perception of parents change by their kids. I know I have a high schooler, middle schooler, and soon to be elementary schooler. Elementary school, kids wanted me every single day. Eat breakfast with me today, Dad. Eat lunch with me. What can you do? Middle school, I don't know you. Don't come around here. I don't want to have anything to. In fact, I'm changing my name. That's pretty much. And high school is a little bit different. They're just kind of like, well, Dad, I need money. But then once they get the money, then it's over. So that's one of those moving targets that's really hard for schools to adapt to also. That's why I've always been really big on those foundational years, is when you set the tone for everything that happens afterwards. So love of math, love of reading, and love of interacting with adults. Because those things never change, and all the way through. And those ultimately are key things. Sorry I went off. Senator Berg?
Thank you, guys. Thank you for your work. Thank you for what obviously is a group of caring, dedicated, committed educators. I have actually 3 questions, if I may.
Start with the third one.
First of all, I am hearing a lot about post-COVID attendance rates being way, way down. What's your attendance rate? And do you think that you're doing things to contribute to that? And if so, is that making a difference in your test scores? That's question number 1. Question number 2. Do most schools in the state have dedicated family resource coordinators and or dedicated family liaison engagement coordinators? Because it seems like you all put a good bit of effort into this, and it has paid off. So I'm wondering, is this atypical or is this typical? And then my third question, just because I might not get a chance to ask it, is I'm going to do what Representative Kulkarni. What is the General Assembly doing to help? And what are we doing to hurt?
Start with attendance.
Yeah, start with attendance.
Do you remember what our rate was at the end of the year? On average, we're between 85 to 92% student attendance on a daily basis. It just every week, every month shifts based on, what illnesses we have going on. But Mr. Brundage and I work actually pretty hand in hand with tackling some of the issues involving attendance, because we have what's called MTSS PLCs. So it's where a group of people come together to discuss the needs of an individual student. So we meet every 6 weeks, and when we see that there's a student that has a high rate of tardies or absences, the team collaborates on interventions that we can get in place to get the children here on time. And a lot of that work is done by the team that he leads, which is our SST team.
So a lot of times our families are late just due to resources. Like they may not have an alarm clock. Their student may not have the appropriate uniform attire. So they have to wash a shirt real quick and get them together. Sometimes, the reality is the parents are working all night and they've overslept trying to prepare that student for school, to wake them up and get them prepared for school the next morning. So we kind of come at attendance with I want to say supportive manner. We call and we ask, what things can we help with? What can we provide you? How can we get the student here? Because we know that, they're not learning anything at home, but as soon as we can get them through those doors, we can pump them up. And so, that's the way my team handles it. We call in we've seen the other side of what it looks like to be like, they need to be here on time, and that didn't work. So we had to come in a more supportive way. Just, what can we provide? What can we help with?
There's one student in particular, I know I pick up quite often. I probably shouldn't say that on record, but
Too late.
sometimes I feel like she purposely misses the bus just so I can come pick her up. But dad doesn't have a car. It's really, she's within walking distance, but it's also one of our special needs students. So, she cannot walk alone to school. So when we say it's all hands on deck, it's truly all hands on deck, making sure the kids are there because, like Lindsell said, if they're not here, they cannot learn. We do, in part of our morning meeting that we do every day on Mondays, is our attendance challenge. So the kids know that our school-wide attendance percentage goal is 95%. And they know that the only way we can get there is if we're here every day. So they see the percentage. So we also share like what the percentage was for the previous week. But then we also, on the positive side, any kid that had perfect attendance from the week before, they're placed on a wheel and we spin, and 2 kids get a prize, from that wheel. But they know that if my name is on the wheel, then that means I was part of that percentage that happened. So they're very much aware of coming to school, why it's important, what our goal is, not just for academics, but also for attendance, because they know if I'm not here, I cannot learn.
That to 92%, is that similar to other schools, elementary schools in Fayette County, or are you all seeing better attendance?
Mr. Bradford might be a better answer for that.
We don't know across the district what their
Yeah.
attendance rates are. We know what ours are because we have to stay laser focused on our students.
Yeah, it would be nice to know how well attendance correlates directly with test scores. But we don't have that data. Thank you. Okay.
Senator Berg, that was a 4th and 5th question for the record. But who's counting? At this point, can we get Dr. Bill Bradford to come up? Because I've got a couple questions about CSI, and we can kind of ask a couple questions about this particular topic. How you doing, sir?
Good afternoon.
If you could introduce yourself.
Sure. My name is Bill Bradford. I am the Assistant Superintendent for School Leadership for Fayette County Public Schools.
Do you have any data to answer Senator Berg's questions off the top of your head?
I think there is a definite correlation between student attendance rates and the rates of academic performance. While I certainly am not prepared to quote the data from Fayette County Schools currently, we have really centered upon attendance as a primary data consideration for our continuous improvement efforts, both over the course of the last academic school year and the school year ahead. And what we did was we established a baseline status as to where we're currently performing at each level, elementary, middle, and high. And then we've essentially executed a plan by which we wanted to increase those rates at each level proportionately. And at the elementary school level, we've really seen considerable strides towards not only meeting those goals, but also exceeding them with regards to students' attendance rates and the amount of students that are not only getting to school, but also getting to school on time, which is another critical piece, because at the elementary level specifically, we really target some of the most important instructional time, math and reading, literacy and math, I should say, in the morning. And so not just getting to school during the day, but getting there on time is critically important.
Thank you for that. I do have a quick comment. I just have one question. We talked about CSI status. Dr. Bradford, can you talk a little bit about that system and how that works?
Sure. So obviously we are expected to perform commensurate with the academic state standards at all levels, elementary, middle, and high. And when we have a school that is demonstrating over time that they are struggling to meet those demands, we qualify with federal designations as such. And CSI and TSI are really examples of that. The connotation of those abbreviations are not entirely favorable, but we really can concentrate on what it does provide to our schools, which is support. So our schools that are labeled as CSI, continuous support and improvement, or continuous support and improvement, as well as TSI, targeted support and improvement, we really focus on what that offers the schools in terms of resources, personnel, fiscal, instructional. And so that is one of the, I think, advantages of being entitled with those classifications is the supports that get targeted to those schools. We've received an immense amount of support from the Kentucky Department of Education as it relates to schools that qualify with these particular titleages. And I think that in our case, in Fayette County schools, the schools that have identified as CSI have really reaped the benefits of those supports. And we've seen schools capitalize upon what those supports provide and then exit status accordingly. And really, William Wells Brown is an exemplary example of that process. For us, we recognize the fact that if a school is identified as CSI, we have to make sure that we are deploying strategies consistent with what has qualified them for those levels of supports. You don't just earn a CSI status based on how all students perform. You typically are earning CSI status based upon how targeted subpopulations of students are performing. And if all students are performing at a certain level that is consistent with how subgroups are performing, then we're really seeing that as a challenge for us to deploy certain strategies and then put action plans in place to target those specific needs.
So William Wells Brown exited. Fayette County Public Schools, I should know the number exactly how many. I think there's 70 locations, 70 schools. How many schools currently are in CSI?
So we have one active CSI school as of this time that is at the middle school level. And I know that one of the questions that was asked was how are we capitalizing upon the elementary schools specifically that have exited from CSI status with such esteem over the course of the last few years. We're using schools like William Wells Brown as a model in using some of those same evidence-based strategies that they used to exit status at our current school that has been identified. And we're certainly looking forward to that school releasing itself as well based on academic performance and achievement.
How has the district done so far up to this point? I mean, over the past 3 or 4 years?
Well, data would suggest that the district is exceeding expectations because we have gone from, over the course of the last 5 years, multiple school sites and campuses that have earned those designations of CSI to a reduction of 2 of the academic school year last year, and then 1 for the academic school year that we are currently entering. So I think that would suggest that we are certainly meeting the demands of our students, and we certainly will not be satisfied until we have 0.
Excellent. Dr. Hutchinson, transient population. You know, that was one of the issues that we dealt with at Winburn. Was about 25 to 30% of our population would ebb and flow during the course of the school year. And that's really, really hard to build culture with a population that changes that much. How all have you handled that?
Well, we've talked about it the last couple of years, but this year we're going to implement, because we've talked about how with kind of our core group of kids who have sustained and have been there, they know the William Wells Brown way. They know what the expectations are. They know that once you enter this building, the expectation is learning. We have high expectations, but we do have about the same, percentage we're looking at that are transient, that are moving in and out. We have a lot of transiency at the beginning of the month when you're looking at, families who have been displaced and are now having to find new homes, doing kind of a William Wells Brown boot camp. So bringing those new students in during their special area time to talk about, this may have been permitted at your old school, but not here. This is the way we do things. This is what learning looks like at William Wells Brown. And having our student leaders lead that. We have student ambassadors who, if you come to get a tour of the building, you're either going to have Melody Westerfield, who is our family and community engagement liaison, and or one of our student ambassadors that will tour the building, that knows about the history of our school, that knows about who we are as a school. And so those students are going to be leading those efforts to the students who are kind of in and out of our building.
Thank you.
I don't
Senator?
know if you want to talk about the house system, how that has.
Yes, I think all of us here, we've attended the Ron Clark Academy in Atlanta, and we had brought the house system back to our school, and we jumped right in. We chose a house based on where we fit in, and then the kids are kind of randomly, they pick out of a box. So they are so bought in. And so there are kids in the house system from kindergarten to 5th grade, and they're a team. And they work together to collaborate to earn points academically, behaviorally, and we celebrate. And new kids that come in, they get to choose a house, and the kids welcome them in. And these kids are our leaders. We vote on a president and vice president, and then they lead the meetings. And it's really awesome to see, because if you do have a behavior problem, the kids will address it. The adults don't have to. So it's really been a great part of our culture, and it's really got student buy-in.
Well, the pep rally that I attended, I actually saw students correcting other students. So it's kind of like a self-sustaining, kind of like a schools within schools, like homes within the school. So I definitely saw that actually manifested. So Senator Berg has a sixth question that she'd like to ask. And at that point, we will adjourn.
Okay, this is my last question, even though I did not get an answer to what does the General Assembly do to help and hurt. But if you are no longer in this special status, do you lose all of this help? Like it all goes away?
Eventually, yes. The district has been good about the transition of, releasing the support. We had a phenomenal team. Part of being in CSI, you get to have some members from the Kentucky Department of Education, educational recovery leaders that come in and help support the efforts. We had 2 phenomenal leaders that came and worked with us for the year that they were here last year. But one of the things that they were phenomenal at is looking to see what we already have in place, because coming in, they were like, you all already have the things in place. And so it was just some fine-tuning pieces. One of them, their last day was this summer, was in June. And so we don't have them here, but we also have the systems and structure set in place to make sure that we're sustaining that piece of it. I think we're on our last round of school improvement funds, the grant that comes along with being in CSI status. So that is kind of the last piece of those funds coming through.
And at the district level, that's a layered support structure. So we consider our schools with the most urgent and pressing needs as receiving the most layered support. And then as schools demonstrate that they have the internal capacity to be able to lead that work a little bit more independently, we start to produce some of those layers of support. And that's what we'll see this year at William Wells Brown. They have earned the right to more independently lead their school improvement efforts. And so we're going to give them the allowance and the leeway by which to do that. And then our schools that are performing at a level that is either suboptimal or not yet to the level that they've been able to simplify, we'll add more layered supports accordingly. We have a service delivery model and then provide services in accordance to that. With regards to your other questions, I think that you'll find a Family Resource Center coordinator or a Family Resource Youth Sever Center coordinator to be a role that's very consistent across the state of Kentucky. Those are state funds that are allocated to districts and then distributed based on economic disadvantage or rates thereof.
So they are there.
Correct. And then the school specifically maintains a family and community engagement liaison. That is probably a little bit more innovative as it relates to both the school as well as our school district. You may not find that to be as popular across the state, but it's one strategy that I think has demonstrated great success at this particular school.
Mm-hmm.
On that note, we will close our official business. I'd like to personally invite everyone to the clap-in tomorrow morning at 7:15 at William Wells Brown.
Yes, sir.
Representative Brown, you've been officially invited. Our next meeting will be Tuesday, August 27th, and motion to adjourn.